Hello, in this video I'm going to talk about divisions of the nervous system. So the whole nervous system is divided into the central and peripheral nervous systems. So the central nervous system just includes the brain and spinal cord. The peripheral nervous system includes everything outside of the brain and spinal cord. So that's any nerves, sensory receptors, other structures that we will talk about in the future. Okay, then the peripheral nervous system is divided into the somatic and autonomic nervous systems. So the somatic nervous system, let me get there. Okay, so the somatic nervous system is going out to the flesh of the body. The word soma means body. So you'll see soma in other contexts, like we talk about the soma of a neuron. We're talking about the body of the neuron. Okay, so soma means body, and somatic, when we refer to the body, we're talking about the flesh of the body, so like muscle, fascia, and skin, compared to like visceral organs. So the flesh of the body is the soma, and so that's where our somatic nervous system is going. The motor division of the somatic nervous system is carrying our voluntary control out to our skeletal muscle. Okay, so the somatic nervous system is carrying our motor commands from the central nervous system out for the voluntary control of movement for our skeletal muscle. The sensory part of the somatic nervous system is carrying sensory information from the flesh, from the somatic part of the body. So from the muscle, fascia, and skin. So it's carrying sensory information about proprioception, touch, pain, itch, and other somatic senses. So it's carrying back information from like joints about position and forces, and carrying information from muscles about a degree of stretch, and from tendons about degree of stretch, and pressure, vibration, itch, tickle. All of those things are all somatic senses carried by the sensory part of the somatic nervous system. Then the autonomic nervous system, the other division of the peripheral nervous system, is also divided into sensory and motor function. Okay, the sensory division is carrying sensory information back from our visceral organs about all kinds of different things. So like about things that are dissolved into our various bodily fluids. So how many hydrogen ions do we have dissolved in the blood, or what is the concentration of oxygen, and those sorts of things. It's carrying information about different pressures, other internal stimuli, all kinds of different things. Okay, so the autonomic nervous system is carrying back sensory information from things that are not somatic, so from anywhere that doesn't have voluntary control. The motor division of the autonomic nervous system is sending out motor commands to the involuntary effectors. So it's sending out motor commands to the smooth and cardiac muscle and to the endocrine and exocrine glands. So anything that does not have voluntary control is receiving motor commands via the autonomic nervous system. So the motor division is divided into sympathetic and parasympathetic. So that's what we'll talk about next. The parasympathetic division of the autonomic nervous system has the nickname rest and digest. So during parasympathetic stimulation, or during a rest and digest phase, that's when there is no emergency, we are at our calmest, and so that we have blood flow that's directed to digestion, the urinary system, reproductive systems, which are all things that sort of go quiet or sort of shut down when there is some kind of emergency. Okay, so we save those functions for when there isn't really anything going on. We don't have to fight off a predator or run away or anything like that. We're able to simply just rest. And during those restful stretches is when we do our digestion and filtering and all of that. Okay, so activities of the parasympathetic nervous system include SLUD. That's an abbreviation, or I guess not an abbreviation, it's an acronym for salivation, lacrimation, urination, digestion, and defecation. Okay, so lacrimation is crying. So salivation lacrimation or crying, urination, function of the urinary system, digestion and defecation, functions of the digestive system. Those are all activities that happen during parasympathetic activation that sort of shut down during sympathetic activation because these are less important. So parasympathetic favors body functions that support conservation and restoration of energy. Okay, so this is when it's kind of our downtime. We don't have to really do anything. So this is a good time for us to restore our energy supply and conserve it. We're not spending a lot of energy. The sympathetic nervous system has the nickname fight or flight because that's the part of our nervous system that engages when there is an emergency. There is something that we need to deal with. It causes excitation. Okay, so this is where like you start feeling your blood pumping and your heart pumping and you start really feeling excited. So blood flow in this case is diverted from the abdominal viscera, which is where it was during our restful state, to the skeletal muscles, heart, and brain to fuel whatever physical response is necessary during a fight or flight situation. Okay, so it goes to our brain, of course, because we need clarity of thought. We need to be able to think faster. So we have increased blood flow to the brain, but also importantly to the heart and skeletal muscles so that we have the ability to respond to whatever it is that is happening in that situation. So it's active during the 4 E's: exercise, excitement, embarrassment, and emergency. Those are the 4 categories of events that will activate the sympathetic nervous system. Okay, so it doesn't have to only be an emergency, and it doesn't have to only be a bad thing. It activates anytime the body needs to be able to step up to the challenge of whatever it is. So that could be exercise. That could be you're excited about something really great that's happening, or you get to see someone you didn't see in a long time. Any kind of excitement, like that excitement that keeps you awake at night when you're trying to go to sleep because you're excited about what's going to happen tomorrow. That's because you are in your more sympathetic state. That's preventing you from relaxing enough to go to sleep. So again, it's not always about a bad thing or an emergency or a life-threatening thing. It could be any of those 4 E's. So the sympathetic nervous system favors body functions that support vigorous activity. So when we're in sympathetic activation, we don't care about conserving energy. We don't care about digesting and absorbing nutrients. We don't care about any of that stuff. We are really just trying to support whatever activity we need to support. So in this state, the body is assuming that we need to be able to exert physical effort to run away or to fight off a predator or to step up to whatever the challenge is that we're trying to step up to. Now, we talk about this sometimes in kind of a negative light, like it's a bad thing to be in a sympathetic state, but being in this sympathetic state allows your body to rise to a challenge, whatever that challenge is. So you might go into a sympathetic state when you're sitting down to take a test, and that's not a bad thing. Because you are getting more blood flow to your brain, you're getting more blood flow to your whole body, but that's not a bad thing. It's helping you step up to whatever the challenge is that you need to face, and that's not bad. It's only bad if we're always in a sympathetic state and we have a hard time soothing the nervous system and being able to sleep at night, for example. So then that's a problem, and we want to work on being able to do that. But our sympathetic nervous system is there to support us and to help us in rising to whatever challenge it is that we need to rise to. I also want to clarify that it's not all parasympathetic or sympathetic. It's not like either we're in a sympathetic state or a parasympathetic state. Really, these 2 branches of the nervous system are operating on sort of a sliding scale. The hypothalamus is governing both. So on one very extreme would be totally sympathetic, like that deep relaxation you have like after you just got a good massage or something like that deep feeling of total rest. That would be the extreme parasympathetic. And then the extreme sympathetic is you're really amped up and ready to go fight off a bear or something. That would be the other extreme. But for the most part, we are not in either of those extremes for hardly any of the day. And so we're always somewhere on that sliding scale between those two extremes. So it's not like we're completely sympathetic or completely parasympathetic at any given time, except for in those two extremes. And so we'll be on that sliding scale just depending on the situation and what the hypothalamus is judging to be the most appropriate response to the situation. And then finally, the enteric nervous system is nicknamed the brain of the gut. So here we're talking about the network of neurons that are innervating the digestive tract or the gastrointestinal tract, made up of over 100 million neurons that supply the GI. So this is tricky in terms of its relationship to the other branches. It's under both parasympathetic and sympathetic motor control. So meaning that it will have, it receives commands and will have different effects depending on whether we're in a more parasympathetic state or sympathetic state. And then it also sends sensory information back through the sensory branch of the autonomic nervous system. Okay, so I actually just want to draw a quick diagram here to help solidify your understanding of these branches and how they all relate to one another. Okay, actually that's not what I want. I want this one. All right, so if we're starting with the nervous system at the top, the nervous system is divided into the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Okay, the central nervous system is just the brain and spinal cord. Okay, then the peripheral nervous system is divided into the somatic, and I'm just going to abbreviate here for time's sake, is in the somatic and the autonomic. Okay, the somatic nervous system has motor commands going out to the soma, out to the flesh of the body, and is bringing back sensory information from those same structures. Okay, then our autonomic, same thing. We've got sensory coming back from all the autonomic structures of the body, coming back from visceral organs and things that are under autonomic control, and has motor commands going out to the autonomic effectors. So just the smooth muscle, cardiac muscle, and the glands of the body. So then that motor part of the autonomic nervous system is divided into the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. Okay, so those are both parts of motor function in the autonomic nervous system. Okay, so those are sending motor commands to the cardiac muscle, smooth muscle, and glands of the body, just on a sliding scale depending on our level of excitement. Okay, so then the enteric nervous system, I would just kind of put down here because it's under motor control of both the parasympathetic and the sympathetic, and it's sending sensory information up via the autonomic nervous system, via the sensory that's coming back from all of our autonomic structures. That includes the enteric nervous system. So there are different ways to diagram this. This is not the only correct way to do this. I've seen it diagrammed in other ways, but I prefer this way myself because it highlights the fact that parasympathetic and sympathetic are only motor functions. So I like to divide the autonomic nervous system into sensory and motor, and then the motor into sympathetic and parasympathetic, because there is no such thing as sensory, parasympathetic, and sympathetic, because those are simply motor functions of the autonomic nervous system. Okay, so thank you for watching, and I'll see you for the next video.